So the first topic here is a really simple concept that I don't see utilized nearly as much as it could be or should be. It's just using the material list to get your best prices. I'll show you in a second the material list, but you can send that to multiple vendors. Just that act alone is going to get their attention and probably get you better prices. So let me just show you real quickly where you do that in EBM. Now I've got a job open here, and the first thing I want to mention before you even start doing any of these tasks, once you've won the job, won the bid, make a copy of the job. Don't do anything to the original job. You know, if you need to, you know, you want to keep that original bid intact, all you do is go to job file and hit copy, and then it'll make a copy of the job. You give it a different name, and then you do the changes or the analysis or whatever you're going to do, value engineering, we've talked about that before. Always do the work on the copy. Don't mess with the original job, because you may need to go back to that. And if you mess up, you got the original there, go back to that, make another copy, and go from there. Okay, so the material list. I'm on the main page on EBM. I've got a job open. It's called sample commercial job. This should be in your system, actually. It's the job that goes out as one of the sample jobs on all of the new installs. But down under reports, you'll see material list. It's the fourth option. And the first screen that comes up here looks a lot like the job extension. You see a button down here that says material list spreadsheet. That's going to put this report into a spreadsheet format, so you can edit things and make selections. And you can also put line after price and labor. So what that does, you'll see in a minute, is on the report you would send out to the supplier, it gives them a line to write in the price. So I'm going to go to material list spreadsheet. I'm just going to save it. There we go. That's what I wanted to see. Okay. So again, you can come down here and you can deselect individual items if you don't want pricing on those when you send the report to the supplier, or if you want to get rid of a whole group here, coming down to the lighting, you just highlight those. You right click and you hit unmarked selected items and you hit preview report. So it says, do you want to print only the marked items? You say yes. And then you can either print a hard copy of this the old-fashioned way and fax it to them. I don't think anybody does that anymore. More likely, you're going to save it as a PDF and then send that out to your suppliers you want to get pricing from. Now, here's a quick little detour here. When they send you the pricing back, if they don't give you individualized pricing, you can actually plug the total into the final summary. On job totals here, we'll come back to this in a few minutes, where I've got the non-quoted material here, I can come up here and put a lump sum. So if they quote me $45,000, I can type that in and that will override the original extension with the prices from the program. So that's a good option to keep in mind. But again, that material list is a very simple, basic report. You can always send that out for pricing. Let your suppliers give you the best price they can. You'll notice that report was organized by phase. That's the default. Unless you tell it otherwise, it's going to organize that report into the various phases. So it separates the feeder wire from the branch wire, from the switch gear and the lighting. Let's go back to the material list one more time. Spreadsheet. So it's giving you the material grouped by phase. We have a feature built into EBM that allows you to compare prices with more than one supplier. And you can compare them to our target price from Epic, which is based on a national average. And there's two ways to compare prices. And I don't want to get into too much detail here, but Net Pricer is an option you can get through Vision now. It's an option where you send the job electronically to your distributor or more than one distributor, and you get it's through the internet, so you get an instant response on the materials in that job for today's prices. So it's like on-demand pricing. Custom pricing is a little bit different. There is a cost issue or aspect to Net Pricer. So that's not free typically, unless your supplier wants to pay for it, but there's a cost with the Net Pricer. With custom pricing, it's more a matter of setting up an arrangement with your suppliers where they give you maybe a monthly update in electronic format, again, you can work that out with the distributors, and we can help you, of course. Some distributors make it available online, so you just log in and download your latest prices. Others send it to you once a month, once a week. It just depends on what you work out with that supplier. So what that does, it loads into Epic, and then EBM reads those prices from Epic, and you can compare your local distributor's pricing to Target or to other suppliers. So let me show you what that looks like. This is pretty cool. We call it price comparison. I've already got a little sample one I did here. I called it comparison. And what we're doing is we're comparing up here at the top left the target price to one of the local suppliers you might have. So this is a net pricer distributor. So these prices from this distributor called Crawford are coming through net pricer. The GB, that's gray bar prices. Those are gray bar prices from the 1st of March. They're just a couple days old. So I'm just going to hit price comparison. I don't need to refresh the prices because I did it just before the webinar. And then you're going to see a spreadsheet here, basically with, and I'll make it bigger. Hopefully you can see all those columns. So you can run 3 comparisons at any time. So what it does is it takes line by line. It's a little hard to see maybe on your end, but that first line under Crawford is in bold. The target price over to the left here is $469 per 100. That's 4-inch PVC. Crawford is at $457, and the gray bar, this is a gray bar branch in Florida, for $466. Now, we try to keep this kind of anonymous. I'm not telling you who the customer these were. It does tell you who the distributor was, but I'm not even telling you what branch of Crawford or gray bar. So we're trying to keep it a little bit anonymous. Just for purposes of demonstration, we're showing you how it works. So you can go to any line on the report. Here's 2.5-inch EMT. The target price is $602. Crawford's quite a bit lower, and gray bar is a little bit in the middle. And then when you come all the way down to the bottom, again, you see these ones in bold, that means that supplier's got a lower price. I'm gonna come all the way down to the bottom here, and it shows you the totals. The target price on all the items is $47,000. The Crawford prices are at $43,701, and gray bar is at $45,000 for the whole job. Now again, that doesn't include any quota materials. It's just your basic commodities, pipe and wire. You can incorporate that into your bid. Down here at the bottom, I can say cherry pick it, use the lowest of individual pricing, or I can go to lowest overall, so that in this case would be Crawford, or I can just pick which one to use. So that gives you some ammunition. That's the whole point here of getting better pricing is, you know, maybe you want to buy from gray bar even though they're not low. So now you've got some ammunition to go back to them and say, hey, you guys are not the lowest ones. I need to get some better pricing from you. So having that information is, I think it's really important to get the best pricing, which obviously means you're going to save money and make more money on your job. So here's another simple report in EBM that helps you focus in on the big ticket items. Again, this might be something you're doing before you bid the job, or now you've got the job and you want to focus in on the big ticket items. In EBM, you'll see this item cost report. And you can tell it to sort by price or by labor. So what it does, instead of you having to look through that spreadsheet of, 3 pages of items, it brings the big ticket items right to the top. And it's probably going to show you the items you expect to be the big ticket items. I had some 600 MCM wire in this little practice job, some 3/0 wire, some number 12. These first 5 or 6 items are the kind of items I expect to see on the top part of this report. So again, those are the ones I would focus in on when I'm going to buy those materials. I want to shop around for those because they have the biggest impact. It sorts by the highest extended price. So that 1,500 feet of 600 MCM wire is almost $20,000 worth of wire. You can see it drops down quite a bit after that. But number 12 is right up there at the top, and so is the 3/0 wire. These two, the wires, you expect to see those at the top of the big feeder wires. Now, the other thing you're going to see happen with this, and I use this all the time as a tool in helping people, if you've made a mistake, maybe you put in the wrong quantity of an item and it's too high, or maybe you accidentally edited the price and you've got it messed up, it may pop up to the top of this report. So again, you can use this report to catch your mistakes. But let me show you real quickly what it shows you, what it looks like when you do it by labor. So again, it's about focus. Where are the big ticket items as far as labor? So it is some of the same items, but your 4 square box comes up here to the top, because in this job there's 60 hours of labor on the 4-inch square boxes. So the number 12 wire you'd expect to be a big labor item. The 1/2-inch EMT on this job is a big labor item. So again, you're looking for things to focus on when you're managing the job in the field. What's critical? I mean, that 600 MCM wire is up there at the top again, so we want to pay a lot of attention to the feeder that is using that wire. One of the things that's really obviously important to making money on the job is how you manage your labor. And there's some numbers in EBM that will help you with that. Now, we were looking at that job extension report just a minute ago, so let's go back to that. We're going to go to job extension, and we're going to do it by phase. So on each subtotal, it tells us the amount of labor for each phase. We've got 38 hours of underground raceway and underground feeder raceway. That's the underground pipe. And each phase has a total. 83 hours for the above ground feeder raceway. And it just keeps coming down the line here. This is always a big one. This is the branch raceway, almost 300 hours. Feeder, wire, etc. So these totals are what you want to track. If you've got a job costing system, that's really what should go into your job costing system. Now, even if you just track the job by the total hours, at the end of the job, you want to know if that 980 hours was over or under budget. But having these numbers here to track if you have a job costing system, and even a basic job, QuickBooks accounting system can do job costing. If they report the hours by phase, at the end of the job or during the job, you can see how each phase is coming out. Now, those phase totals are also on the job totals, and that's a really easier place to look at it. On job totals here, we've got labor, got non-quota material, and we've got the labor down here, the 980 hours. So here's those same numbers. So again, if you're tracking the job by phase, or you're using these reports to help you manage the job, you can see how many hours you've got budgeted, for example, for lighting. So when you're trying to figure out your manpower, how many electricians to put on the job, you see you've got 98 hours budgeted. That gives you a good starting point to how many electricians you need to put out there. And then you can use that as a goal. Either, make the electricians aware of how many hours they have to get this done. And some people even use it as an incentive. They can tell them, if you come out under budget here, you might get a little bonus here. So these are really important numbers when it comes to managing the job, keeping the electricians on task. If they have the impression that, they're just expected to go out there and work and do their job and show up and all that, that's okay. But if you really want them to perform, then you need to give them a goal. So this is where you can establish those goals. It's right there in your estimate. Now, again, if this is a copy of the job and you've made some changes to the job since the beginning, those will be reflected here. If they add some stuff to the job, you still got the reports here to give them targets for goals. So again, you can use those labor totals for job costing. You can use them to help you plan your labor staging and management. And then if you want to use that for incentives, you can do that too. So we're going to switch gears here a minute and talk about contract review. This is more somewhat outside of the EBM environment, but one of the first things you want to check these days is to see if the material prices have gone up. Material prices have been on a pretty wild ride here the last few months. If you're not qualifying your bid that it's good for a certain amount of time, you need to start doing that immediately. Typically it used to be you'd give 30 days that the bid was good for. Right now, that's probably still pretty risky. One of the things you need to do is talk to your suppliers, see how long they're going to hold the prices. If you're using the their prices on the bid, how long they're going to hold those prices. It is not unusual to be able to renegotiate a price or a bid after the fact, especially if it's been put on hold for an amount of time. EBM will let you update the prices. That's fine. But you have to look at your contract. What does it allow for? What period of time can you pass on price changes for? Sometimes it's just a verbal thing, and what's reasonable here. But when you're qualifying your bid, you should let them know the prices are good for a week or whatever it is. I mean, some suppliers will just tell you that price is good today. That's it. If you buy the material today, that's the price. Tomorrow, we can't make any promises. Change orders are a real important part of managing the job. Whether it's a formal contract or whether it's just a discussion with the owner or the general contractor, you probably want to establish what your hourly rate's going to be. Now in EBM, you could have different rates for the change order than you did on the bid, and I would expect that to be the case. So there's an hourly rate that has to be negotiated, and that can go a lot of different directions. So sometimes it has to be your actual cost. Sometimes it could be more of a selling price. Maybe you charge $85 an hour for service, and that's what you can charge on change orders. Other times they're going to actually document what your actual cost is. Now the labor rate is one side of the coin. The other side is the labor units that are going to be acceptable for change orders. In EBM, when you extend the job here, go back to the default for a minute. You have the option on the labor column to use the column 1, 2, or 3. Column 3 is based on the NECA labor manual. If you're not familiar with that, go ahead and Google it and take a look at it. It's a labor manual that's been around the electrical industry for now, 70, 80, 90 years. And a lot of general contractors and construction management people are aware of it and accept that for change orders. Our column 3 in EBM is based on NECA, what NECA calls their column 1 or standard. Now, if they'll let you use NECA 2 or NECA 3, all you have to do is add a factor. You could take column 3, which is NECA 1, add 25%, and you've got NECA 2. You don't have to use the target price on your change orders. If you can use the trade price, you're going to have a lot more margin built in. If you can't use the trade price, you can use the target price, and you can build a price factor in. You can add 30%, 50%, whatever. Now that doesn't show on the report unless you tell it to. So if you need to build a margin in on your change orders prior to submitting them, you can do that. Just put a percentage here. You can do the same thing with labor, and those percentages don't appear anywhere in the report. The other issue will be overhead and profit, or sometimes it's just a across the board markup. That may be something that's in the contract. It may be have to negotiate it. A lot of the times, it's negotiated after you submit the first change order, and they say, "What do you mean 15% overhead and 10% profit?" So you got to be prepared for that and make sure that you've got yourself covered in how you price the material, what labor units you've used, and that kind of thing. And then finally, what kind of backup are they going to require? There's kind of 3 levels of backup, really. There is no backup. Here's the price. They may want backup on just the material quantities. So you can do that with the material list like we looked at the beginning of the webinar. So you could just give them a breakdown. Here's all the, what did I do there? Material list. We see this a lot of time with T&M time material work. Sometimes it's acceptable just to give the customer a material breakdown with quantities, and then you can give them the total on the actual change order. If they require all the detail, again, you can go to your job extension and give them a material and labor breakdown. So it's really a question of, do they want no backup, which is not going to be typically the case. They may just want enough backup to justify the material quantities, or they may want a report like this that actually shows them line by line material costs and labor costs on each item. And again, keep in mind, obviously, this is not a bid situation, so we can handle the pricing and the labor and the markups and all that different than how you would do it on a bid. They may be satisfied with just seeing the totals. This little print summary report gives them a pretty good breakdown. You might be able to just submit this because it does break out the material and the labor, shows your hourly rates and that kind of thing. So how much detail is important here. The more detail, the more careful you have to be, but there's still plenty of opportunities to make money on change orders. Talked a minute ago about the labor rates. Let me go back to that in EBM real quick. When you're on the job total screen here, you can click on your hourly rate. Now this is my default rate. I can have as many other rates set up as I want. So I might have a prevailing wage rate, I might have a change order rate. I could have different rates set up here, and I could use those on my change orders versus, again, what I use to bid. We talked about using the trade price. I talked about using a hidden markup. Again, you can put a factor on your material price column, whichever one you use. If you use the trade price, if you use the target price, if you use one of your local distributors, you can build that markup in again to the job extension report. And just one more time, that's under, you choose whatever labor column you're going to, or price column you're going to use, and then you put the factor here, and it just builds it into the price. So if the target price is $1 and I put a 50% factor, it's going to show them $1.50 on the report. So you can build that markup into your prices or your labor units. Finally, and again, this is probably kind of preaching to the choir, but especially if you're the owner of the business and you're running your electricians in the field, you need them to get written approval or email sign off on any changes that are made, hopefully before they're done. Worst case is you have them sign off after they've done the work, that you've done extra work. And it's really important to document any changes, even if it's just moving an outlet from one wall to another or moving it 10 feet away. Get that documented, get it signed off. If nothing else, send an email to document it for your own system that you've done that work. This is a little bit of a story I remember from my days working for my dad's company. It was always frustrating to him, that his electricians, he would hear after the fact that they, just did some changes there in the field just to kind of make things go smoother and easier. The electricians don't care if they spend an extra 2 hours to take care of something in the field, but you multiply that by 10, 20, or 50 different electricians, and they're all doing it once a week. It's a whole lot of money at the end of the month or the end of the year. So you need to explain to your employees that you can't do anything for free. You need to get it approved before you do it, and get it signed off after you do it. The other thing about it, even if you're not going to charge extra for it, document it, because when it comes to the end of the job and you're looking at that punch list and they've got 10 things that they're saying you need to take care of, and you've got a list of 10 things that you already took care of, that's good for negotiating. You can't go to a negotiation without having some ammunition. So the question is, are the percentages based on markup or gross profit? On the job total screen on EBM, it shows you both. Let me get back there. So again, that's something you have to determine based on the contract or the discussions with your customer. We do overhead and profit as markup. And again, they may only allow you to put X%, and they don't let you separate overhead from profit, but those are markups. So they're added to the cost. Gross profit is based on a percentage of the total price. So let me see if I can give you just a quick example. If you've got a $50,000 cost and you add $50,000 or add 50% to that, you're at $75,000. Now that's a 50% markup. Now, gross profit would be 25,000 divided into the 75,000, so that's only 33%. So a 50% markup is only a 33% gross profit. And again, you may have to have that discussion with your customer because it's an important differentiation. And if you need to go through the math on that, I can show you how it works. It's a reciprocal calculation if you need to do gross profit versus markup. But Just keep that in mind. A 50% markup is not 50% gross profit. 50% markup is a 33% gross profit.